Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight we are venturing into the coldest corners of the human experience with 7 of the most disturbing true winter horror stories ever recorded. Stories that unfold in blizzards, blackouts, and snowbound towns where help is always one storm too far away. These are not campfire inventions or recycled legends, but personal accounts from people who came forward with experiences so specific, so consistent, and so unnerving that they refused to dismiss them as coincidence or imagination. Each case has been cross-checked through multiple sources, timelines, and corroborating details wherever possible. So what you are about to hear stands on more than just a single frightened memory. From nights when something walked across untouched snow toward a locked house, to isolated highways where passengers appeared out of nowhere, to winter workplaces and homes where the line between the living and the dead thinned with every falling flake. These confessions were shared by people who still live with the scars of those winters. If you seek horror that feels uncomfortably real and lingers long after the snow has melted, subscribe to Buried Files, turn on notifications, and join this archive of the unexplained that grows darker with every episode. When you finish tonight's stories, tell your own winter encounters in the comments below, because the next file we open may be the one you thought no one would ever believe. Every time snow hits the highway signs just right, I see the outline of her handprint on my windshield again. Not the way it looked that night, smeared and frantic, but the ghost of it. Like the glass never really forgot. I tell people I stopped doing winter night shifts because the overtime was not worth the risk. Because the roads out by County Road 12 are a mess when the plows fall behind. The truth is a lot simpler and a lot harder to explain. I stopped because one woman I tried to help should not have been there to begin with. That winter I was running deliveries for a small parts warehouse outside town. It was not glamorous work, but it kept the lights on. My whole life ran on a plain white van, a thermos of bad coffee, and podcasts playing low enough that I could still hear the road. After a few seasons of it, I thought I understood snow. I thought I knew the way it changes the world into something softer and quieter. Something that feels safe if you keep your speed steady and your wits about you. That is the kind of lie winter tells you. It covers everything in the same clean sheet, and you forget what is buried under it. The night it happened, I was already late getting back to the depot. A storm had blown in faster than the forecast promised, and by 9, the world beyond my headlights was nothing but white static. The roads out by County Road 12 have no streetlights, just the occasional reflector post and whatever glow you get from the horizon. I remember my hands hurting from how hard I was gripping the wheel, the heater cranked up even though my feet still felt numb. The wipers beat back and forth on high and still could not keep up. It was like driving through the inside of a snow globe someone would not stop shaking. I had my route down to muscle memory. Out along 12, cut across Old Mill, loop back toward the highway. That night the app kept trying to reroute me, and I kept ignoring it because I knew better. The screen glowed faint blue on the dash, showing a little van icon crawling along a thin gray line. That line felt like the only thing connecting me to the rest of the world. On either side of me, the fields vanished into darkness, edges softened by drifts that were starting to swallow the ditches. You do not think about how alone you are out there until something happens and there is no one else to see it. I almost missed the stranded car. The storm had buried it up past the wheel wells on the passenger side, and the hazard lights were so weak they looked like someone breathing under a blanket. I caught a flash of orange in the corner of my eye and braked harder than I should have, feeling the back end of the van fishtail before the tires bit. For a second, I thought about driving on. That is the part that still bothers me. There was a full second where I considered pretending I had not seen anything. Then I pictured some family sitting in a freezing car, waiting for help that never came, and I pulled over. Up close, the car looked wrong. Snow had drifted up over the back window completely, leaving only a half moon of glass clear where the wiper had been. The front hood was dusted but not piled up, like it had not been there long, and the driver's door hung slightly open. The hazard lights ticked on and off, painting the inside with a dull, sickly orange that made everything look underwater. I left the van idling on the shoulder with my own flashers on and grabbed my phone and flashlight. "Hey," I called, leaning down toward the open door. "You okay in there?" For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of wind swirling through the trees lining the road. Then a woman's voice floated up from the snowbank beside the car. "Please," she said, "please do not leave." She was sitting on the ground on the passenger side, half buried where the plow had thrown snow against the car earlier in the day. Her coat was the kind that looks warm in pictures, but does nothing once it is wet. Some shiny fabric that had gone dark from melted snow. Her hair stuck to her cheeks in frozen clumps, and her lips were cracked and pale. When she looked up at me, her eyes were too bright, that glassy look people get when their body is starting to give up. "I am not going anywhere," I said. "We will get you warm. Is there anyone else with you?" Her gaze flicked toward the car, toward the back seat, then back to me. A small movement, but I caught it. "He's still inside," she whispered. "He would not wake up." The word "he" made the hairs rise on my arms under all my layers. I leaned into the car, shining my flashlight over the seats. The interior was coated in a fine layer of frost, the kind that looks pretty on windows until you realize it is forming inside. The windshield was feathered with ice where breath had once warmed it. The back seat was empty. No blankets, no car seat, no body. Just an old fast food bag crumpled on the floor and a scattering of road salt crystals. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "there is no one in here." She shook her head, hard like a kid refusing medicine. "He was right there," she said. "He is always right there. You cannot see him when the lights are on." I told myself she was hypothermic and not making sense. I told myself to focus on what I could fix. I helped her to her feet, surprised at how light she felt, like she was mostly coat. Her hand was bare when it grabbed my wrist, fingers like ice hooks. For a second, I almost pulled away, but something in the way she held on kept me steady. She looked at my face like she was trying to decide whether I was real. "What is your name?" I asked, guiding her toward the van. She hesitated. "You know my name," she said quietly. That startled me enough that I stopped walking. "No," I said. "I do not. I am just a driver. I am trying to help you." That was when she said it. My name. First name. Just like my mother says it when she is disappointed. It slipped out of her mouth like she had been practicing. "James," she said, "you always stop." The wind gusted then, blowing a sheet of snow across the road. For a second, we were in a white tunnel, the world outside erased. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe she had seen the name tag I wore on my jacket. Maybe she had heard someone on the radio say it. Except my name tag was zipped up under my coat, and the radio was turned down to a faint hum. I got her into the passenger seat of the van, cranked the heater toward her, and wrapped my spare blanket around her shoulders. Her teeth chattered, but she kept her eyes fixed on the windshield, on the shape of her car half buried in the dark. "We need to call someone," I said. "Ambulance, tow truck, something." "No hospital." she said too quickly. They never believed me. I dialed anyway. Signal was weak, but a bar and a half was enough to get through to dispatch. I gave them my location, the make and color of the car, her condition. I did not mention the invisible passenger. I was still telling myself that part was just cold talking. "Help is on the way," the dispatcher said. "Stay in your vehicle and keep warm if you can." While we waited, the storm seemed to tighten around us. The windows fogged at the corners from our breath. The hazard lights on her car kept blinking, slower now, like a heartbeat fading. I tried making small talk, asking where she had been headed, if she had family nearby. Most of her answers were half-formed, drifting. "He does not like it when I talk about it," she said at one point. "Who?" I asked before I could stop myself. She nodded toward the windshield, toward nothing. "He does not like the snow," she said. "He always gets stuck here." The way she said "always" made my stomach twist. I thought about all the times I had driven this route in past winters, all the storms I had pushed through. How many stranded cars had I seen? A few? How many had I stopped for? Not as many as I should have. Headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, high and bright, cutting through the snow like a knife. For a second, relief flooded me. Then the lights flickered, doubled, and I realized there was nothing else behind them. No shape of a truck, no outline of a cab. Just two floating orbs sliding closer down the road. "Looks like the tow is here," I said, more to convince myself than her. She reached out suddenly and pressed her palm flat against the inside of the windshield. The glass squeaked under her skin. "He's coming," she whispered. "You will see him this time." The lights drew level with us and then passed. As they did, the world outside the van went perfectly silent. No wind, no engine, no ticking hazard lights. The snow seemed to hang in the air, suspended. For one heartbeat, I saw it. A shape outlined in frost on the outside of the windshield. A hand matching hers on the other side of the glass. Long fingers, too long, splayed wide as if testing the barrier. I could not move. Neither could she. We sat there, palms mirrored, while the floating lights drifted ahead toward her buried car. They stopped beside it, hung there for a moment, and then winked out all at once. The sound of the storm rushed back in like someone turning up a volume knob. My chest hurt like I had been holding my breath. She let her hand slide down the glass, leaving a clear smear that began to freeze at the edges. "He found it," she said softly. "Maybe he will not have to try again." The ambulance and the county plow arrived 10 minutes later. Real vehicles with real engines and chains on their tires. The paramedics wrapped her in a foil blanket and loaded her up, checking her vitals, asking her questions she mostly did not answer. When one of them turned to thank me, I had to ask, "Do people crash here a lot?" I said. "On this stretch?" He glanced past me at the half-buried car and the way the snow around it did not quite look right. "Every winter," he said. "Same mile marker, almost to the foot. Last big one was a family about 6 years back. Woman kept insisting her husband was still in the car even after the fire crew had pulled everyone out. Shock does strange things." I did not tell him about the frost hand. I did not tell him she had called me by name or that I had felt something on the other side of the glass pushing back. I watched them drive away, red and blue lights swallowed by the storm. And then I walked back to her car. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see old scars on the metal around the door where stickers had been scraped off. A faint rectangle of residue on the back bumper where a memorial decal might have been. On the driver's side window, under the latest layer of ice, there were scratches. 5 lines, over and over, at the level of someone's head. I finished my shift. I drove back along County Road 12 at a crawl, knuckles white on the wheel, like nothing had happened. I told my supervisor about the delay and left out everything that did not sound normal. The next day, the car was gone. A fresh ridge of plowed snow, the only sign it had been there. The day after that, I told the depot I would not be taking night routes anymore. People think of winter as this peaceful, clean season. They think the snow erases things. That is not what it does. Snow preserves. It keeps impressions long after they should have melted away. Somewhere out by that mile marker, there are tracks laid over tracks laid over tracks, all from the same desperate walk around a freezing car. I know, because on the first storm of every year since, I wake up in the dark convinced I can hear hazard lights ticking somewhere in the distance. And on certain mornings, when the frost creeps up the corners of my bedroom window, there is a shape in it that should not be there. 5 long fingers, splayed, reaching in. The officer kept asking why I had not called sooner, as if there is a normal time to admit that someone has been standing under your bedroom window all winter. I sat at that metal table in the small interview room with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I could not drink, and tried to explain that the first footprints only made me uneasy, not terrified. Terror came later, when the snow stopped being a blanket and turned into a record, a perfect white page that kept telling me the same story every morning. Back in December, when all of this started, I thought I was getting a good deal. A co-worker's aunt was spending the winter in Florida and needed someone to house-sit her place in a quiet little subdivision on the edge of town. Cute 2-bedroom, attached garage, fireplace that did not really work but looked nice in photos. All I had to do was bring in the mail, water 2 half-dead plants, and make sure the pipes did not freeze. In exchange, I got to live there rent-free for 3 months while she sunned herself somewhere warm. I was tired of the thin walls and constant sirens at my old apartment. The idea of snow-blanketed streets, quiet nights, and a driveway that was actually mine sounded like a vacation. The first week there felt exactly like the fantasy I had built in my head. I came home from my job at the clinic after dark, watched my breath fog as I carried groceries from the car, and actually enjoyed shoveling the walkway the next morning while the world was still quiet. The neighborhood was one of those places where all the houses looked like slightly different versions of each other, each one with its little porch light and wreath. I met one neighbor while I was dragging the garbage bin to the curb, an older man in a flannel jacket who gave me a nod and said, "You must be the niece." And I did not bother to correct him. It felt safer that way. The first odd thing happened after the season's first real storm. I remember because I had left my car on the street like an idiot and had to dig it out before work. The snow had fallen all night, heavy, thick flakes that swallowed sound. When I opened the front door that morning, a clean white sheet stretched from porch to sidewalk. No tire tracks, no footprints, just smooth, untouched snow glowing blue in the early light. I almost did not want to ruin it. Then I saw them. The footprints were directly under the window of the bedroom I had been sleeping in. They started at the side of the house, right where the foundation dipped closest to the shrubs, and stopped in a neat line just below the window. They were adult-sized, boot prints, the kind with deep treads that showed up clearly. The thing that made my stomach clench was that there were no prints leading to or away from them. Just 4 perfect impressions in a row, as if someone had stepped out of the wall, stood there, and then been lifted straight up into the air. I told myself it was a trick of the snow. Maybe drifting had covered up the rest. Maybe the plow had pushed some of them over. I stood there on the porch in my pajamas, freezing, inventing explanations. Eventually, I told myself what everyone tells themselves the first time something does not make sense. There had to be a normal reason. I went to work and tried not to think about it. The second storm came a week later, and with it, the second set of prints. That time the snow was even deeper, heavy enough that I had to shove my shoulder into the door to get it open. The world outside was muffled and still, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you are underwater. I hesitated before looking toward the bedroom window. Part of me had already decided I would see nothing, that the first time had been some fluke. But there they were again. Same place, same size. 4 clean impressions right up against the foundation, toes pointing toward the glass, no approach, no exit. I took a picture on my phone, more out of instinct than any plan. When I zoomed in, I could see the tread pattern clearly, little triangles with a circle in the center. I am not a shoe person, but it looked familiar, like something I had seen 100 times without registering. That detail bothered me all day. At work, I brought it up to a coworker in a half-joking way, trying to make myself sound amused instead of unsettled. She laughed and said it was probably kids messing around, maybe someone hopping off a low fence. I nodded along, but there was no fence along that side of the house, just a narrow strip of dead garden bed in the neighbor's yard. When I got home that night, I stood in the bedroom with the light off, looking out through the blinds at the patch of snow under the window. The porch light from next door threw just enough glow for me to see the shallow depressions where the prints had been. The snow had softened a little during the day, losing its sharp edges, but the pattern was still there, like fingertips pressed into clay. I told myself I was being dramatic and closed the blinds all the way. The third time, the prints were closer. By then, late December, the cold had settled in for real. The kind of cold that makes the inside of your nose hurt when you breathe. I had developed a little routine to keep the house feeling less empty. Music on the speaker when I got home, a candle on the kitchen island, a show playing in the background while I did laundry. I would walk from room to room at night just to remind myself that everything was still where I had left it. The storm that night had started as sleet before turning to snow. The sound on the roof changed from a hiss to a dull, soft patter while I was in the shower. I was toweling my hair dry when I heard it. A faint, rhythmic crunch outside the wall, directly beside the bedroom. 3 slow steps. Pause. 3 more. At first, it barely registered as anything other than the normal creaks of a winter house. Then I remembered that the only thing on that side of the house was dead garden and snow. I turned off the bathroom fan, holding my breath. The crunch came again, this time stopping right below the window. For several seconds, there was nothing. Just the hum of the furnace and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then a soft tap against the glass, not loud, but unmistakable. A fingertip, maybe 2, testing. I opened the bedroom door and flipped on the light like an idiot, as if I was going to catch someone in the act. The room looked exactly the same. Bed unmade, my suitcase half unpacked in the corner, lamp casting a warm circle on the nightstand. I stepped up to the window, raised the blinds with a shaky hand, and stared out into the darkness. Nothing. Just blowing snow and the faint shape of the neighbor's fence. No face pressed to the glass, no looming figure. I let myself breathe again and went to bed with the lamp on, telling myself it was a power-saving trick to keep the room warm. In the morning, the prints were there again. This time, instead of 4 neat impressions in a row, there were 8, staggered, closer to the wall, overlapping, as if someone had stood there for a long time, shifting their weight from one foot to the other. That was the morning I went to the hardware store for a motion light and a cheap plastic security camera. The guy behind the counter showed me how to install them, making small talk about how this winter was going to be a rough one. I did not explain that I was trying to catch someone who could walk through snow without leaving tracks to get there. I just nodded and bought what he suggested. I put the light up over the back door and aimed the fake camera toward the side of the house where the bedroom window was. It made me feel better for exactly 2 nights. The next snowfall came on New Year's Eve. Everyone else in the city was out drinking, squeezing into crowded bars, or at least pretending to have fun at someone's house. I was on the couch with a blanket and a mug of tea, half watching a movie and half listening to the wind rattle the gutters. Fireworks popped in the distance, muted by the storm. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of the back door rattling in its frame. Not a knock, not a single test of the handle, but a steady, impatient shake, like someone with cold hands and no patience. The motion light outside was blazing through the thin curtains, turning the kitchen into a washed-out glare. My heart climbed into my throat. I grabbed my phone and stood in the hallway, watching the shadow of the doorknob jump with each rattle. Whoever was out there did not ring the doorbell. They did not call out. They just kept working the handle like they had a right to be inside. After what felt like an hour, but could not have been more than 30 seconds, it stopped. I did not open the door. I waited until the light timed out and the kitchen fell dark again. Then I went to the bedroom and pulled the curtains all the way shut, every nerve on edge. I slept in fits, waking up at every creak, every sigh of the furnace. In the morning, I opened the back door, my stomach clenched tight, expecting to see footprints all over the porch. There were some, a single set leading up the steps and back down again, looping toward the driveway. At least that part was normal. But when I walked around to the side of the house, the prints under the bedroom window made my skin crawl. They were pressed right up against the foundation now, toes almost touching the wall. And there were so many of them, I could not count. The snow was churned in a tight oval, as if someone had been pacing in place for a very long time. In the center of that oval, where the treads overlapped so much the details blurred, there were 2 deep, narrow holes side by side, like someone had planted something there and pulled it back up. I took another picture and, without really planning to, drove straight to the police station on my way to work. I think part of me expected to be laughed out of the building. A woman walks in with photos of footprints and a story about rattling doorknobs in winter. It is not exactly high on the priority list. The officer at the front desk listened politely enough while I talked, his eyes flicking from my face to the printed photos and back again. He asked if I had seen anyone, if there had been any damage, if anything was missing. The answer to all of those was no. It is probably some kid messing around, he said. Or maybe the previous owner had an ex who has not figured out she moved. You can file a report if you want, but without a suspect or any kind of threat, there is not much we can do. I filed the report anyway, more out of stubbornness than hope. When he handed me the copy, his fingers brushed the edge of the photo showing the footprints under the window. "You said you were staying at the Miller place?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Why?" He shrugged and pulled his hand back. "Nothing. Just remember to keep your doors locked." That did not help. After that, the house stopped feeling like a place I was borrowing and started feeling like something I was sharing with someone I could not see. Every fresh snowfall became a test. I would wake up early, move through the quiet rooms, and open the front door with my heart hammering, bracing myself. Some mornings, there was nothing new. The wind had smoothed out old marks, and for a few hours I could pretend it was over. Other mornings, the prints were back under the window, sometimes closer together, sometimes spaced further apart. Like whoever was out there was changing their mind about how close they wanted to be. One night in late January, the pattern changed. I had stayed late at work, covering for someone with the flu. By the time I turned onto the street, the snow was already falling in thick sheets, swirling in the beams of my headlights. The houses on either side of the road were dark, except for the bluish flicker of televisions. As I pulled into the driveway, my stomach did that lurch it had started doing whenever I came home after dark. I killed the engine and sat there for a minute, watching my breath cloud the windshield, telling myself to stop being ridiculous. When I finally forced myself to get out, the first thing I noticed was that the motion light over the back door was on. It should have gone off long ago. The second thing I noticed was that the snow between the driveway and the porch was not pristine. A single set of footprints led from the street, past my car, and around the side of the house. My side. I followed them with my eyes, not my feet. They curved toward the bedroom window, of course. But they did not stop there. They continued along the wall, right under the other windows, all the way to the corner. From where I stood, I could not see where they went next, and I did not want to. Inside, the house felt wrong. The air had that heavy stillness it gets when a room has been closed up for a long time, except I had been there that morning. My keys sounded too loud on the kitchen counter. The refrigerator hum made me jump. I told myself to check the bedroom window so I could sleep, get it out of the way. The curtains in that room were thin, cheap things that let the streetlight in around the edges. As I stepped closer, I saw something that made my mouth go dry. Condensation on the glass. Not frost this time, but a faint oval of fog right at face level, like someone had stood there breathing onto the pane. The rest of the window was cold and clear. Without thinking, I lifted my hand and pressed my palm to the glass, mirroring the shape. The cold bit instantly, burning my skin. For a second, my imagination tried to tell me I could feel another hand on the other side. But when I yanked my hand away, there was only my own print fading into the fog. I slept on the couch that night with the television on, sound low, light filling the room. Every time I drifted off, I jolted awake convinced I had heard snow crunching just outside the wall. At some point, exhaustion won. I woke up to gray morning light and the weatherman droning on about wind chill. When I opened the front door, there were no new footprints under the bedroom window. They were inside. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Little wet spots dotted the hardwood floor of the hallway, pale and irregular, leading from the back of the house toward the bedroom. When I bent down and touched one, my fingers came away damp and gritty. Melted snow. The prints were small, just the size of the ball of a foot, like someone had walked barefoot on the boards with wet, half-frozen soles. They stopped at the bedroom doorway. I did not cross that threshold. I stood there with my heart pounding in my throat, staring at those little patches scattered like punctuation marks on the floor. I backed away, grabbed my keys, and left the house without even changing out of my pajamas. I drove to the same police station as before and walked in with my hair unbrushed and my coat thrown over my shoulders. That is how I ended up in the interview room, trying to explain to the officer that whatever had been standing under my window all winter had finally decided to come inside. He asked his questions. Had I seen anyone? No. Had I heard a door? Just rattling weeks before. Was anything missing? I did not know, because I had not stayed long enough to check. Eventually, they sent a patrol car to walk through the house with me. By the time we got back, the wet spots on the floor had mostly dried, but you could still see the faint outlines if you knew where to look. There were no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were locked. Nothing obvious was disturbed. One of the officers suggested maybe a pipe had leaked. Another asked if I might have come in with snow on my feet and just not remembered. I moved back to my tiny apartment that weekend, losing my deposit without a fight. The owner's aunt was angry in a distant, offended way when she called from Florida, asking why I had left the house empty. I lied and said I had been offered a place closer to work. I did not tell her that something had been visiting her bedroom window night after night, learning the shape of the house, waiting for the right storm. Since then, every time it snows, I still find myself checking the ground under whatever window I sleep near. Apartment, hotel, my parents' guest room at Christmas. I wake up early and pull the curtain aside, heart racing, scanning the white for impressions that do not lead anywhere. People say snow makes everything quiet and beautiful. For me, it is just when the world writes down what has been happening all along. Some nights, when the wind dies and the whole street is still, I swear I can hear it again. That slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps moving through deep snow, stopping just short of the house. I tell myself it is just a plow in the distance, or ice sliding off a roof. I tell myself a lot of things, but I never ever sleep with my bed under a window in winter anymore. Every group trip has that one decision everyone pretends to vote on, but that is already made. For us, that decision was Dry Lake. When my friends started talking about renting cabins up there for New Year's, I said yes before they even finished the sentence. I grew up on winter postcards and car commercials, all those slick roads and pine trees and laughing people in knit hats. I wanted that. I wanted a week where the worst thing that could happen was someone forgetting the marshmallows. We booked 4 cabins around the frozen lake, all part of an old family-owned place that mostly stayed empty in the off-season. They were numbered in a rough horseshoe, cabins 1 through 8. But 9 sat off by itself, up a small rise, half hidden by trees. "Nobody wants 9, the owner's son said when we checked in, sliding a ring of keys across the counter. "It is the drafty one." Everyone laughed. My friends snatched up the closer cabins, the ones with easy paths to the parking area and the main lodge. That left me standing there with the key tagged 9 and a shrug I hoped looked casual. The first time I saw it, cabin 9 looked like it had been added as an afterthought. The steps sagged a little in the middle, and the porch light flickered when the wind picked up. The other cabins had strings of white lights along their eaves, but 9 only had a single bulb over the door and a crooked metal number nailed to the siding. I told myself it was fine, that I was just going to sleep there. Most of our time would be at the others anyway. It was a place to dump my bag and pass out after too much hot chocolate and cheap champagne. Inside, it smelled like old wood and cold air that had been sitting still for months. The heater rattled when I turned it on, coughing out dust before settling into a low, uneven hum. There was a tiny kitchen, a table meant for 4 but missing 1 chair, and a narrow bedroom with a bed that looked like it had been dragged from another cabin and abandoned here. The walls were paneled in dark, knotty pine, the kind that makes a room feel smaller even when the light is on. There was a guest book on the table, one of those spiral-bound things with a fake leather cover and our cabin memories etched in gold. I flipped it open expecting cheesy messages about s'mores and anniversaries. The first few pages were exactly that. Neatly written notes from families who came up in summer, kids practicing their signatures, someone sketching a cartoon fish. Then, a few pages in, the handwriting changed. First night here. Something walked around the cabin from 2:13 to 2:27. Counted the steps. No tracks in the morning. The next entry was 3 years later. Different pen, different style. Woke up to footsteps on the porch. No one there. Door was still locked from the inside. Could hear breathing against the wall. Another gap. Another winter. Do not stay in 9 alone. That entry stopped. Mid-sentence, the pen dragging off the page like whoever was writing had been interrupted. The rest of the book from there was blank. I laughed once, too loud in the empty room, and told myself it was a joke. Some bored teenager, some local trying to freak out tourists. I closed the book and put it back in the center of the table, spine perfectly straight. My friends loved that I had the creepy cabin. That is how they described it after I read the entries to them over dinner in cabin 3, everyone huddled around a pot of stew and a flickering fireplace. That is where the killer always shows up, one of them said, nudging me with his elbow. Main character energy, man. I rolled my eyes and played along. But I also made sure my phone was charged before I walked back to 9 that first night. The snow squeaked under my boots, the kind of dry cold that makes every sound sharper. The quiet up there was different from city quiet. It was layered. Wind in the trees, the distant crack of ice shifting on the lake, the occasional creak from another cabin. As I climbed the steps to 9, I heard a crunch in the snow off to my left, somewhere between me and the tree line. One crisp step, then nothing. I froze with my hand on the doorknob, listening. It did not come again. Inside, I left the porch light on. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted something out there to know I was awake. I checked the locks twice, walking that pointless little circuit from door to window to door again. The heater finally steadied into a steady drone, a low white noise that filled the silence. I did not sleep well. Every time I drifted off, some tiny sound pulled me back. The pop of settling wood, the hiss of wind squeezing past the window frame, the faint scrape of a branch against the roof. At some point in the night, I woke up certain I had heard footsteps outside. Not on the porch, not close, just circling. That was the word that lodged in my head. Circling. Snow compressing under something heavy, moving in a slow loop around the cabin. I lay there holding my breath, staring at the dark ceiling, counting in my head. 5 steps. Pause. 6. Pause. 7. The pattern repeated, closer then further away, like someone drawing invisible rings in the snow. I do not know how long it went on. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep with the heater's drone and that soft, crunching tangled together. In the morning, curiosity wrestled with dread and won. I pulled on my boots and jacket and stepped out into the brittle sunlight. My breath hung in front of me as I walked around the side of cabin 9. The snow came up almost to the tops of my boots in places, untouched except for the tracks. At first, I did not understand the shapes. They were too wide for normal footprints, too shallow for an animal. It looked like something had pressed long, flat pads into the snow, evenly spaced, all the way around the cabin in a perfect circle about 8 feet from the walls. No approach, no starting point. Just a ring of impressions that never broke or crossed. I guess the moose like you, one of my friends joked when they hiked up to see for themselves. We stomped through the pattern, trampling it into something unrecognizable. Someone took a picture. It became a story right away. Something we could poke at and laugh about over breakfast. I let them. It was easier than saying that while they were joking about moose, I had been lying in the dark counting each pass. That night, a storm rolled in. The sky went from pale blue to steel gray over the course of an hour. By dinner, the trees on the far side of the lake were just vague shapes behind a wall of falling snow. We played cards in cabin 2 until well past midnight, trying to ignore the way the wind shook the walls. When I finally bundled up and started the climb to 9, the snow was already deep enough that every step was work. The porch light was out. It should not have bothered me that much, but it did. I stood there in the dark, fumbling with numb fingers for the key, knowing I would have to cross the threshold of that black rectangle without being able to see the inside first. When the door finally swung inward, the cabin greeted me with cold, still air, and nothing else. I found the lamp by memory and snapped it on. The guest book lay open on the table. I knew I had closed it. I had put it back with the cover flat, centered. Now it lay open to the blank pages after that last half-finished warning. The pages were perfectly flat. No breeze, no draft could have done that. I stepped closer and saw faint marks on the paper. Shallow grooves where someone had pressed a pen too lightly to leave ink, but hard enough to indent the page. Lines, half-formed letters that never quite became words. I closed the book gently and put it back exactly where it had been, feeling ridiculous and watched at the same time. I told myself I was tired, that I was letting a cheap prop get under my skin. I went to bed with my socks on and my hoodie hood pulled up, cocooned under the thin blankets. At some point, the heater cut off. The silence that followed was so total, it woke me. I opened my eyes into darkness. The lamp was off. The heater was off. Even the distant noise from the other cabins was gone. No laughter, no music, no doors opening and closing. The only sound was a deep, slow creak from beneath the floorboards, as if something heavy was shifting its weight directly under the bed. The cold came next. Not the normal drafty cabin cold, but a sudden, sharp drop, like someone had opened a walk-in freezer. My breath billowed out in front of my face. I could see it, even in the scant light leaking around the edges of the curtains from the muted, snow-reflected sky. The air felt thick, damp, the way it does beside a frozen lake at night. Then I heard the steps again. Not outside this time, underneath. Starting at one corner, moving along in a straight line, slow and methodical. Each board groaned in turn, a wave passing under me, around the room, then back. Whatever it was, it moved like it knew every nail, every gap. I did not move. I lay there with my hands clenched in the blanket, heart slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt. The rationale part of my brain tried to come up with an explanation. Pipes, old wood, the way temperature changes make structures settle. But none of that accounted for the rhythm. The way the creaks paused by the wall that faced the lake, lingered there, then continued on. When it reached the spot directly under my head, everything went still. For a moment, there was no sound at all. Then a soft, wet rasp came from the other side of the wall behind the headboard, like something heavy was dragging itself upward through damp wood. I listened to it climb inch by inch until it reached the height of my pillow. The air around my face dropped another few degrees. I could feel cold radiating through the wall, a presence without shape pressing in. Something tapped the wall once. Not sharp, more like the slow, exploratory push of knuckles. I broke. I scrambled out of bed, tripping over the covers, and stumbled into the main room. The lamp snapped on with a harsh yellow glare. The heater roared back to life, as if it had only been waiting for permission. The normal creaks of the cabin returned, like background noise I had not realized I had been missing. When I forced myself to look out the front window, I saw nothing but snow and darkness. No figures, no movement, just the faint glow of other cabins further down the slope, their windows tiny squares of safety. At dawn, I went outside and walked around to the lake-facing side of Cabin 9. The storm had filled in most of the tracks from the night before, leaving a mostly smooth surface. Mostly. Directly below the bedroom wall, the snow had a different texture. It was not footprints, not exactly. More like something broad and heavy had lain there and then been pulled back toward the frozen shore, leaving a shallow, uneven trough that led straight to the edge of the lake. I checked out of Cabin 9 that afternoon. I told my friends I'd not been sleeping well and wanted to crash on the couch in Cabin 2 instead. They teased me at first, then saw my face and backed off. We still finished the trip. We still played cards and drank too much and took pictures on the dock pretending we were not freezing. Years later, I drove past Dry Lake in summer. The resort had been updated. New paint, new signage, some of the old cabins knocked down and replaced with modern rentals. Cabin 9 was gone. In its place, a gravel parking area and a picnic table with a bright red umbrella. From the road, the lake looked harmless. Kids splashing near the shore, kayaks cutting little lines across the surface. But when I closed my eyes that night back home, all I could see was the cabin as it had been, half swallowed by snow. Something circling just beyond the light, patient and old, and so very used to waiting for people who thought they were just there to make memories. The psychiatrist kept circling back to the same question. Why did I keep going back into that building? The way she said building instead of home stung more than I expected. I sat there in that overbright evaluation room, fingers wrapped around a styrofoam cup of water I was not drinking, and tried to explain that when you are barely making rent in a city winter, you do not just walk away from a lease because the heat makes noises and one apartment down the hall will not stay empty. I moved into that place in November, right when the cold really dug in. It was an old brick complex, the kind you picture when you think of city apartment in some grainy indie movie. Narrow hallways, radiators that hissed and clanged, flickering exit signs. I was in grad school, drowning in loans and caffeine. So when I found a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor with a rent figure I could actually manage, I took it without thinking too hard. It was drafty. The elevator complained every time it reached my floor, and the laundry room in the basement smelled like boiled dust. But it was mine. The first time I heard the crying from 3B, I thought it was the pipes. My unit was 3D. 2 doors down from the stairwell, across from 3C, and right next to 3B. The first week, I barely noticed anything except my own exhaustion. I would leave before sunrise, trudge through slush to the campus library, spend 10 hours with my eyes burning over articles, and come home so late that the hallway felt like a tunnel in a subway at closing time. That first night, I remember dropping my bag, kicking off my salt-stained boots, and standing in my tiny kitchen listening to this faint, muffled sound through the wall. It was rhythmic at first, a kind of low, hiccuping sob that blended with the radiator noise. Then, underneath it, I heard a scraping, a slow, dragging sound like heavy furniture being moved inch by inch across old hardwood. I froze, listening. The crying hit a higher pitch, then cut off abruptly. The dragging went on for another 10 seconds and stopped too. I told myself it was a TV. Some late-night drama, volume turned up too loud. I had not met my neighbors yet. People cry, people move furniture. Old buildings make weird sounds. That is what I told myself as I microwaved leftovers and pretended not to flinch when the pipes banged. By the second week, the sound had a schedule. Every night, somewhere between 1:45 and 2:15 a.m., the crying would start. Always the same. A low sob, like someone trying not to be heard, then a stifled, breathless gasp. Then that awful dragging. The first few times, I lay there in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between sounds. My brain tried to map the noise to the floor plan. 3B's living room backed up to my bedroom wall. Maybe someone was rearranging their life at 2 in the morning. Maybe they were in trouble, and I should knock. I almost did once. I was standing in my hallway in thick socks and an oversized hoodie, hand hovering in front of the wall between my apartment and 3B, when the sound changed. The crying stopped mid-sob, like a radio switched off. The dragging cut out a beat later. In that sudden silence, I became hyper-aware of my own breathing, the hum of my refrigerator, the faint buzz of the light in the bathroom. I stood there with my fist half raised and the absolute conviction that whatever was on the other side of that wall was now listening to me. The next morning, I saw the building manager in the lobby. She was a heavy-set woman in a puffer coat, juggling mail and a cup of coffee. As casually as I could, I asked, "Hey, who is in 3B? I think they are moving furniture late." She frowned. "Nobody?" she said. 3B is vacant, has been since last February." I laughed like I thought she was joking. "No, I mean the unit next to mine, 3rd floor on the left." 3B, she repeated, unlocking a metal mailbox. "We are still waiting on repairs in there. There is nobody living on that side of the hall except you." It sat wrong in my stomach the rest of the day. Vacant. Repairs. My mind ran through possibilities. Squatters. Someone slipping past the superintendent. Maybe a maintenance guy working at night for some reason. Anything was better than the alternative, which I refused to name. I started taking photos of the hallway whenever I came or went. It was partly to prove to myself that everything was normal. 3A's door with the dent near the bottom, 3C's wreath, and 3B's door. Plain, brown, with a peephole and a deadbolt. And a strip of painter's tape crossed over the knob that the manager had written "No entry" on in black marker. The tape never looked disturbed. The first time I saw the peephole move, I was coming back from the laundry room. Arms full of a basket, headphones in, damp warmth clinging to my clothes. My door was propped open with my shoe. As I passed 3B, something made me glance at it. Maybe it was the way the light hit the brass circle, maybe it was nothing. But I saw it. The peephole lens turned, just a fraction, like an eye refocusing. Not a trick of my reflection, not my own movement. It rotated, then tilted slightly downward, pointing at me. I stopped dead. The hallway suddenly felt too long, too narrow. I told myself peepholes do not move on their own. Someone had to be on the other side, looking out. My first instinct was anger. Someone was in that vacant unit spying through the door. My second was fear. "Hello?" I heard myself say, voice thin. "Maintenance? Manager?" Nothing. No footsteps, no reply. The peephole stayed pointed in my direction, absolutely still. After a long moment, I forced my legs to move and hurried into my place, locking the door, sliding the chain across with shaking hands. That night, the crying started earlier. I tried to drown it out with a white noise on my phone. But there is something about certain sounds that cuts through everything. It is like your brain is tuned to them. The sobs came in waves, then the dragging, then a new sound, a dull, heavy thump against our shared wall, 3 times. I lay there with my eyes open in the dark, hand over my mouth, counting each impact. The next day, I went to the manager again, this time more insistent. I mentioned the noise, the peephole, the fact that I was a single woman living alone and did not feel safe. She sighed and said she would take a look, then told me, almost as an afterthought, that 3B had a history. A woman lived there last winter, she said, lowering her voice like the empty lobby might overhear. The heat messed up during that cold snap. She kept calling the emergency line, saying no one was fixing it fast enough. By the time maintenance got in, The manager made a vague gesture toward her neck. It was bad. We do not talk about it with the other tenants. I waited for her to say there had been a boyfriend, a squatter, something human. She did not. After that, it was like the building leaned into the story. The radiators in my unit started failing on the coldest nights. Not completely, but enough that I could see my own breath if I stood near the wall I shared with 3B. I bought a space heater and extra blankets. My friends joked that I was living in a haunted tenement. I joked along because it was easier than describing how I would sometimes wake at 3:07 a.m. with the absolute certainty that someone was standing on the other side of my bedroom wall, head tilted, listening to me breathe. One night in January, the cold was so intense, it felt personal. The entire building seemed to have exhaled and forgotten how to inhale. The thermostat in my place blinked 58 degrees in dumb, unhelpful numbers. I wore 2 pairs of socks, sweatpants, a hoodie, and still could not get warm. That was the night the light appeared under 3B's door. It was nearly 2 in the morning. I had given up on sleep and was sitting on my couch with all the lamps on, watching some mindless show on my laptop just to have noise. The hallway outside was usually black at that hour, just the green glow of the exit sign. But through the gap under my front door, I saw it. A thin line of yellow, pulsing brighter, dimmer like candlelight. For a long minute, I just stared at it, brain refusing to process. Then I stood up, every cell screaming at me not to, and walked to the door. I did not open it. I knelt and looked through my peephole. The hallway was empty. No one standing there, no shadows moving. But across from me, under 3B's door, a warm, flickering glow traced the floor. It moved like firelight, but there was no orange splash against the far wall, no smoke, no alarms. It was more contained than that, more deliberate. As I watched, the light dimmed, slowly, like someone cupping a flame with their hand. Then, within that glow, I saw something that made my throat close. A shadow, long and thin, broke the line of light at the bottom of the door. Fingers, someone or something, had placed their hand flat on the floor on the other side. The shadow curled one finger, then another. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks, not on the door itself, but on my side of the shared silence. I backed away from the peephole so fast I almost fell over. For a moment, I thought about calling the police, the fire department, anybody. Instead, I did the worst possible thing. I froze. I stood in my living room with my hands clamped over my ears, tears hot on my face, waiting for the building to either burn down or go silent. The building did neither. After a while, the light under my door faded back to the usual greenish gloom. The heat coughed back to life. Somewhere downstairs, someone slammed an outside door, anchoring me back in the ordinary world. The next day is a blur of classes and coffee and the thudding pulse of too little sleep. That evening, I packed a bag and went to stay on a friend's couch for a few days. When I picked up the rest of my things a week later, 3B's door was propped open. A maintenance guy in a paint-speckled hoodie was rolling primer over the walls inside. I could see the outline where a radiator had once been bolted. The floor under the window was stained darker, patchy, like the wood had soaked up something it was never meant to. The peephole in my own door has never moved again, because I do not live there anymore. I broke my lease paid the penalty, and found a smaller place above a noisy corner store, where any crying I hear is definitely coming from a TV. But winter still gets me. Every time the radiators knock in a new apartment, I hold my breath. Every time a hallway is too quiet after midnight, I see that flicker of light under a closed door that should not be occupied. The psychiatrist asked again, softer that time, why I kept going back into that building after everything. I could have told her the practical reasons: money, school, the illusion that lightning does not strike twice. What I actually said was the thing I had not admitted out loud until that moment. Because if she was still in there, I said, I did not want her to be alone. Where I grew up, you were not a real local until you drove the North Ridge Road in a blizzard. That was the rite of passage, the dumb tradition people passed down like it was a campfire story instead of a death wish. If you took that narrow mountain road in whiteout conditions and came back with your car and your pride intact, you got to sit a little taller at the diner, tell newcomers how it is not that bad if you know the turns. Most winters, I just repeated the story. One winter, I decided to make it true. I was 17 that year, full of the mean kind of confidence you only get before life really teaches you anything. My dad had finally trusted me with his old sedan, a tank of a car with bald tires and a heater that worked too well. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's, when the plows were tired and the town was half shut down. The snow had started in the afternoon and kept falling in that steady, relentless way that makes the world smaller every hour. By 9, the main road was just 2 dark ruts with white walls building up on either side. I could have stayed home. That is what I tell myself now. I could have watched movies with my little sister, eaten leftovers, let the storm be background noise. Instead, when my friend texted that he and a couple others were going to do the ridge, I grabbed my keys and lied to my parents about going to a movie in town. The sky had that heavy, low look when I stepped outside, like a ceiling pressing down. The start of North Ridge Road does not look like much. It peels off from the highway at a shallow angle between 2 stands of pines, a small green sign half buried in snow the only marker. People in town told the story of the family that went over the edge there one winter. They had names once, but over time they just became that family. The details shifted depending on who was talking. Sometimes it was a drunk driver, sometimes it was black ice, sometimes something in the road that made them swerve. The one thing everyone kept the same was the warning. If you see headlights behind you on that road in a storm, do not stop. I never asked where that part came from. It was just part of the lore, something you repeated automatically when the topic came up. Like I said, we treated it like a story, not a rule. My friends piled into my car at the bottom of the turnoff, breath puffing in the cold, cheeks red. There were 4 of us. I was driving, because it was my dad's car and my stupid idea. We laughed too loud as we buckled in, the way you do when you are trying to prove you are not nervous. The windshield wipers swiped back and forth, already struggling to keep up. The first stretch of the ridge always feels deceptively easy. The incline is gentle, the trees spaced out enough that you can see the valley lights behind you if you look. Tonight, those lights vanished pretty quickly, swallowed by the curtain of falling snow. The road narrowed, the snowbanks on either side rising like soft walls. The car's headlights carved out a tunnel ahead of us, and everything beyond that tunnel might as well have not existed. At first, we treated it like a game. My friend in the passenger seat, Mark, kept up a running commentary on how I should hug the inside of each curve. The 2 in the back sang along off-key to whatever song the weak radio could pick up. I nodded like I knew what I was doing, hands locked at 10 and 2, eyes flicking between the road and the blurry outline of the guardrail where it still existed. About 10 minutes in, the wind picked up. Snow started blowing sideways across the beams, making it look like the road was moving under us instead of the other way around. I eased off the gas, feeling the tires slip once, catch again. The trees were closer now, black pillars loaded with white. Every few seconds, a gust would dump a powdery sheet from a branch, obscuring everything for a heartbeat. "Dude, you good?" Mark asked, finally hearing the tightness in my breathing. "Yeah," I said, "just taking it slow." We had just come out of a long right-hand curve when I saw them. At first, I thought it was just another reflection in the snow, a trick of light off the drifts. Then it resolved into two distinct points, pale and far behind us, headlights cresting the beginning of the ridge. "Guess we are not the only idiots tonight," someone in the back said. The lights stayed small for a while, bobbing slightly with the bumps in the road. I focused forward, tracing the faint dark line where other tires had gone before the snow filled in their tracks. The road here had no guardrail, just a shallow ditch, and then a steep drop into trees. I knew that in theory. In the storm, it was just white going down and white going up. After a few more turns, I checked the rear view again. The lights were closer now, not dangerously close, just keeping pace. Whatever they were driving, they were matching my speed exactly. Not gaining, not falling back. Two pale circles floating in the dark, their edges blurred by snow. "Maybe we should let them pass," Mark said. "How?" I snapped, harsher than I intended. "There's nowhere to pull over." We all knew the road. There were only a couple of wide spots big enough for two cars to pass each other comfortably, and they were still ahead of us. The idea of trying to nose into a snowbank on that narrow strip, half blind, made my palms sweat. "Just keep going," one of the guys in the back said. "They can deal." So I did. I kept going. I tried to pretend the headlights were not there, which worked for about 30 seconds at a time. Then something in my brain would insist I check again, and each time they were a little bigger, a little brighter, filling more of the mirror. Still no sound of another engine, though. Just ours, straining up the grade, and the steady whump of the wipers. The radio cut out halfway, through a song. It did that sometimes up in the hills, losing the station, but this time it did not switch to static. The sound just stopped. One beat there was music. The next there was only the labored breathing of the heater fan. For a second, the silence inside the car was so complete, it felt like my ears had filled with snow. "Lose the signal?" Mark asked, fiddling with the knob. The speakers crackled softly, but nothing came through. Instead, from somewhere behind us, we heard something else. A faint, overlapping murmur, like many voices talking at once through a wall. It was there and gone so quickly that I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. The others went quiet too, each of us listening for it to come back. It did not. The next curve was a hairpin to the left, with a tiny turnout on the outside. In summer, people used it to take pictures of the valley. In winter, the plows piled extra snow there. Tonight, I could barely see where the road ended and the turnout began. My brain did a quick, terrified calculation. If I braked too hard, we could slide. If I kept going, those headlights would end up right on our bumper. The lights were close now. Too close. When I glanced in the mirror, they were big enough that they washed out everything behind us. No shape of a hood, no outline of a roof. Just white glare. I could feel them on the back of my neck. "Okay, I am going to let them by," I said, more for myself than anyone. You sure? Mark asked, but his voice sounded small. I eased off the gas even more and put on my blinker out of habit, though it was pointless out there. As we approached the hairpin, I steered toward where I knew the turnout had to be, feeling the tires crunch through deeper snow. The car tilted slightly as we left the packed center of the road, the steering wheel fighting me. For a moment, I thought I had misjudged, and we were about to slide off completely. We stopped with a lurch, the front bumper kissing a bank of snow that came up over the hood. The car rocked once and settled. My heart was pounding so hard I could taste it. Behind us, the headlights grew huge, flooding the interior. Everyone held their breath without being told. Stay, I said. Do not get out. Just let them go around. The lights reached our back window, and then everything went wrong. They did not slow down. They did not angle around us. They glided up to our rear bumper and then passed. So close I could have reached out and touched them if the glass had not been there. For a few impossible seconds, the entire car was filled with white, like someone had dropped us into a single flash from a camera that would not end. In that blank, overexposed moment, I saw it. Not the car, not really. There was no solid shape, no metal, no paint. Just the suggestion of a front end, twisted and crumpled, ice and snow packed into the mangled grille. Where the driver's side window should have been, there was only shattered darkness. And in that darkness, a face turned toward us, pale and ruined, eyes wide and fixed right on mine. Then it was gone. The headlights slid ahead, shrinking, the glow snapping back into two distinct circles. The radio came back on mid-verse, low and tinny. The heater fan sounded too loud. I realized my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. Did you see? Someone in the back started, then cut themselves off. Just go, Mark said hoarsely. Please, just get back on the road. I pulled us out of the turnout on trembling legs, feeling the tires spin once before gripping. The rest of the drive passed in a kind of stunned silence. We did not talk. We did not sing. We watched the retreating lights until they reached the next curve. And then they vanished. Not over a rise, not swallowed by the storm. One moment they were there, the next the road ahead was just our own beams hitting the swirling snow. We made it home. We lied to each other, said it must have been a plow or a truck with weird lights, some visual trick. 2 days later, at the gas station, an older mechanic heard us whispering about the ridge and shook his head. You kids are idiots, he said. That road already took its due. He told us in his slow way about the night the family went over, how the father had refused to stop even when his wife begged him to because he did not want to lose momentum on the grade. They say if you drive the same speed he did in a storm, he fines you, the mechanic added, almost casually. Tries to tuck in behind you again, tries to finish the run. I do not know if what we saw was that man or just our fear feeding on a story we already knew. I only know that now, years later, I will drive an extra hour out of my way in winter to avoid Northridge Road. If I have to go anywhere near it, I turn off the music and keep my eyes fixed ahead, refusing to glance at the mirror, no matter how much I think I feel light creeping up behind me. Because if there is one thing that night taught me, it is that some traditions are not about courage at all. They are just people rehearsing their own ghosts. People picture nursing homes at Christmas as warm, safe places. They never picture what happens after lights out in January. That is something I learned on the night shift at Maple Haven. When the hallways were so quiet, the only sounds were the TVs left on low in a few rooms and the radiators ticking like cooling engines. I went into nursing thinking I was signing up to help people die with dignity. I did not realize I would also be responsible for keeping something else in that building from getting loose. When I started there, I was 24 and grateful for the job. Night shift paid a little more, and I told myself I liked the calm. Maple Haven was small, just 2 floors and a short, forgotten basement wing that used to be part of an older hospital. The residents called it the Old Hall. We did not use it anymore except for storage in the breaker room, but you could still feel it, like a cold draft under a closed door. The first time I went down there with a maintenance tech, my breath fogged even though the rest of the building was warm. He noticed me shivering. "They did psych down here in the 70s, he said, like that explained the temperature. Walls remember. By December, we were short-staffed like every winter. Flu, snowstorms, kids home from school. On nights when the roads were bad, it might just be me, one other nurse, and whoever they could bribe from agency. Most of our residents slept or pretended to. The ones who could not would camp out at the nurse's station asking about their meds or their dead husbands or who was singing in the vents. I got used to the strange conversations that come with dementia. You nod, you redirect, you write your notes. Then Mr. Harris started predicting the weather. He was one of my hospice patients, mid-70s, lungs shot from a lifetime of smoking and bad luck. His room was at the end of the second-floor hall, right above the old wing. He had this way of staring past you when you talked to him, like he was listening to someone else. The first time he said it, I was doing his evening meds. "Power goes out at 2:17, he rasped, eyes on the ceiling. I smiled, checked his oxygen. "We have a generator," I said. "You are okay." He shook his head. "Not on this wing. You will hear it pop. Then you will hear him." Him. I wanted to ask who he meant, but another call light went off and I let it go. At 2:19 a.m., right as I was finishing charting, the overhead lights flickered and died. The hum of the vents cut off. For a heartbeat, the building was as silent as a held breath. Then, down the hall, I heard the generator kick in and everything sputtered back to life. Everywhere, except the last 6 rooms on Mr. Harris's side. We spent the rest of the night running extension cords, dragging in space heaters, piling extra blankets. The maintenance on call said the breaker for that section had tripped, and something was making it blow, again every time he reset it. We made it until morning without losing anyone, but the temperature in that stretch of hallway never climbed much above 50. When I checked on Mr. Harris at dawn, he was warm and dry under 2 blankets, eyes clear. "Told you," he whispered. "He does not like it when it gets too warm. He sleeps, mostly. But you people keep messing with the thermostat." I laughed that off like I did with the weather comment. People on high doses of morphine say strange things. Still, I wrote a note about his predictions in the margin of my shift report. It felt wrong to ignore them completely. The cold snaps kept coming. January in our town always feels like punishment, but that year was worse. Pipes froze in the older houses near the river. The news ran segments on staying safe in extreme weather. At Maple Haven, we made jokes about building igloos in the courtyard. But at night, especially in the last hours before dawn, the building felt off. Whole sections would go quiet in the wrong way, the way a room does after someone stops breathing. One night, I was doing rounds with my cart when Mr. Harris grabbed my wrist. "Tonight," he said, voice suddenly sharp. "You got to keep the heat up or he will start looking again." "Who?" I asked, more irritated than scared. It had been a long shift. He blinked slowly. "The cold one downstairs?" You think that's a draft? Those rooms in the old hall, they were not empty when they turned off the lights the first time. I pulled my arm back gently. You should rest, Mr. Harris. He did not answer. He just stared past me at the wall like he could see through the floor. Around midnight, the wind came up. You could hear it through the double-pane windows, a low howl that made the blinds tremble. The snow started a little after, heavy flakes slapping against the glass. I checked the weather app between med passes. Wind chill advisory, risk of rolling blackouts. I thought about my apartment's cheap windows and tried not to. At 1:52 a.m., the first call light on the board blinked red. Room 204, then 206, then 210. Usually they came one at a time. Bathroom, pain, confusion. This time the whole end of the hall lit up like a Christmas tree. When I answered the first room, Mrs. Klein's, she was sitting upright in bed, teeth chattering even though the thermostat on her wall read 72. "It is freezing," she said. "Shut the window, honey." The window was closed. I could feel the heat blasting from the radiator. The air around my face was normal, but when I stepped closer to her bed, it was like walking into a freezer. My breath fogged in one sharp cloud, like there was an invisible line across the room. Mrs. Klein grabbed my hand, and her skin was ice cold. The other rooms were the same. The temperature in the hallway felt fine, but each doorway there was a drop, a curtain of cold hanging just past the threshold. Residents complained of fingers and toes going numb. One of them, Mr. Lopez, kept pointing at the vent in his ceiling. "Do you hear it?" he asked. "He is in there, crawling around." I told myself it was the generator straining, air getting backed up in the ducts. I put in a call to maintenance and turned every radiator dial all the way up. The other nurse on duty stayed near the nurse's station, watching monitors and oxygen levels, ready to call 911 if anyone's numbers dipped. At 2:13 a.m., all the lights in that wing went out in one sharp pop. The emergency lights in the main hallway stayed on, dim and yellow, but the last 6 rooms dropped into total darkness. My cart screen died. The air went still. In the sudden quiet, I heard something I can still hear if I let myself think about it. A long, low exhale, moving under my feet, as if the building itself had sighed in relief. My first instinct should have been to run for flashlights, to check on everyone. Instead, I found myself walking toward the stairwell door at the end of the hall, the one that led down to the old wing. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. The door was supposed to be locked, but the crash bar pushed open under my hand with barely any resistance. The stairs down to the basement smelled like rust and mop water. No motion sensor lights came on. The only glow came from a tiny red LED on the fire panel halfway down. With each step, the temperature dropped until my nose hurt. When I reached the bottom, my shoes squeaked on tile dusted with frost. The old hall stretched out in front of me, a short corridor lined with heavy doors, all propped open with wedges of wood. We used the first couple of rooms for old file cabinets and broken equipment. The ones at the far end were empty, or they were supposed to be. As I stood there, hugging my arms to my chest, a thin, pale mist seeped out from under the last door on the left. It hugged the floor, curling around my shoes, cold enough to make my ankles ache. The door itself was not propped like the others. It stood barely ajar, just enough that I could see the edge of a metal bed frame inside. The mist pulsed in and out, like breath. Something dragged across the floor in that room. Slow, deliberate. Not the scrape of plastic on tile, but the heavy, wet sound of weight being pulled. It came closer to the gap under the door, then stopped. For a beat, there was nothing. Then a hand flattened against the narrow opening, fingers so pale they were almost translucent, nails pressing white crescents against tile. The skin was rimmed with frost. "You are late," a voice said, right next to my ear. It was not a loud voice. If anything, it was too soft, like someone whispering in a movie theater. But it came from both nowhere and everywhere, echoing in my chest more than in the air. I could not tell if it was behind me, in the room, or inside my head. I did not recognize it, but it sounded tired. So tired. I do not remember running back, up the stairs. 1 second I was staring at that hand, at the way frost was starting to spread outward from it like growing veins. And the next, I was at the nurse's station, lungs burning, my co-worker's face a blur of questions. The lights in the resident rooms flicked back on 30 seconds later, all at once. The thermostats blinked and reset. The call lights stopped. When maintenance arrived, grumbling about the hour, the basement hall was warm. Warmer, anyway. The mist was gone. The last door on the left was propped open like the others, a wedge of wood neatly in place. Inside, dust lay undisturbed on the bedframe, except for 5 narrow streaks, evenly spaced, running from the mattress down the side like something had dragged its fingers there. Mr. Harris died 2 nights later. It was peaceful, as far as those things go. His breathing slowed, his grip on my hand loosened, and he exhaled one last time with a tiny, relieved smile. "Heat will hold now," he murmured, voice barely a breath. "He is settled." I told myself he meant himself, that he was just another man, making himself into a story to feel better about dying. Then, a week after his funeral, they closed off the old wing completely. New owners, renovations. The breaker to that section was shut off for good. I left Maple Haven by spring. I went to a clinic job with bright walls and no night shifts, where the worst thing I have to deal with is paperwork and flu shots. Sometimes, on my way home, I drive past the nursing home. The windows glow warm in the early dark, Christmas lights sagging on the shrubs. But every winter, when the first deep cold hits and the radiators in my apartment knock and hiss, I find myself counting seconds between sounds, waiting for the moment when all the background noise drops out at once. Waiting to hear that long, slow exhale rising from somewhere below my feet. And wondering if whatever was waiting in that last room on the left ever really got what it wanted. Or if it is just biding its time for the next time someone decides the old hall is the perfect place to store forgotten things. The house at the end of Wren Street is gone now, but every first snowfall I still see its roofline in my mind. When I drove back into town last winter to help my parents through a bad cold snap, I told myself I was just going to be there a couple of weeks. Fix a few pipes, shovel their driveway, sleep in my old room, and pretend this place was not as small as I remembered. I did not plan on parking every night within sight of the lot where that house used to stand. I did not plan on remembering what I have spent most of my adult life trying to forget. Back when I was a kid, that house was the neighborhood story. Every street has one. The place your parents tell you not to go near, which of course becomes the only place you want to be. The man who lived there, Mr. Avery, barely spoke to anyone. He wore the same heavy brown coat all year, even in fall, and had this slow, shuffling walk that made it look like the cold had gotten into his bones and never left. The other adults said he was just lonely. The kids said he stole dogs and kept jars of eyeballs in his basement. I do not know who started that one, but we repeated it like gospel. One winter when I was 9, my friends and I dared each other to ring his doorbell after dark. It had been snowing all day. That thick, quiet snow that swallows sound and turns the whole block into a muffled world of orange streetlights and blue shadows. I remember the way my breath hung in front of my face like smoke as I ran up his walkway, boots squeaking on the packed powder. My friend stayed at the corner, ready to bolt. I remember the bell under my glove, the hollow chime echoing inside. I remember giggling, turning to run. I do not remember the door opening. That is the gap. Everything after that is blank until the moment a police officer was carrying me up our own front steps, my mother crying, my dad's face the color of paper. They said they found me sitting on the curb 2 houses down from Mr. Avery's, coat unzipped, no hat, no gloves, skin so cold my lips had gone white. I could not tell them how long I had been there. I could not tell them where my boots were. No one could ever explain why there were no footprints leading to or from that spot in the snow, just a clear patch of wet concrete where I had been sitting. The town did what small towns do. They made a story that hurt less than the truth. They said I must have gotten scared and run home, then gotten turned around. They said maybe some older kids were playing a prank. No one questioned Mr. Avery because he had never bothered anyone. A year later, he died alone in that house during another cold snap. And a few years after that, the house was condemned and torn down. The lot sat empty, a raw rectangle of dirt at the very end of Wren, like a missing tooth. I moved away after high school and did my best not to think about any of it. Then last winter, the pipes in my parents' kitchen burst during the first real freeze, and I found myself back on that same street, 34 years old, parking my car under the same sad streetlight. The lot where the Avery house had been was just a stretch of uneven snow with a for sale sign planted at the far curb. Or that is all it was supposed to be. The first time I saw the light, I thought it was a reflection. I had been out late buying space heaters and insulation tape. It was close to midnight when I turned onto Wren, the snow coming down in slow, lazy flakes that glowed in my headlights. My parents' house was near the middle of the block. As I rolled past the empty lot, something flickered at the corner of my eye. A small, steady glow, low to the ground. I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine, heart doing that stupid stutter it does when your brain notices something before you do. When I stepped back out into the cold and looked properly, there it was, a single candle flame, or what looked like one, in the middle of the lot where the living room of the old house would have been. No lantern, no glass, just a pinprick of golden light hovering above the snow. I told myself it had to be a trick of the street lamp, some weird reflection off ice. I told myself the teenagers had probably left something there. But the longer I stood there, the more wrong it looked. The snow between me and that light was untouched. No footprints, no tire tracks, just a smooth field of white. I went inside, locked the door, and pretended not to look out the front window for the rest of the night. The next day, the snowplow came through, leaving dirty ridges along the edges of the lot. The candle was gone. For a few days, I convinced myself it had just been headlights hitting a patch of ice. I focused on helping my dad crawl under the sink, on calling plumbers, on keeping my mom from slipping on the front steps. Normal things. Then another storm hit. This one was worse. Wind drove the snow sideways, piling drifts against doors and burying mailboxes. After we dug out the cars and I checked the utility room for leaks, I found myself looking down toward the end of the street without meaning to. The sky was a flat clouded gray, the kind that makes it impossible to tell what time it is. And everything had that strange, bright gloom you only get in winter. In the center of the lot, the light was back. Closer this time. not in the middle, but nearer the front, maybe a few feet from where the front steps of the old house would have been. It flickered steadily, indifferent to the wind. I squinted, trying to see some logical source. My breath fogged the inside of the glass. When I wiped it away with my sleeve, my stomach dropped. There were footprints now. A single set, small and bare like a child's, leading from the sidewalk to the light. No boots, no wide treads, just narrow, naked feet pressed into the snow, toes splayed, heels deep. They stopped at the glow and did not continue anywhere else. The snow beyond them was smooth. I told myself not to go down there. Then I zipped my coat and went down there. Up close, the air around that light felt wrong, too. Not warm like you'd expect from a flame, but colder, the way it does when you open a freezer door. The prints were real. I could see the individual toes, the way the arch of the foot had barely touched the surface. They were fresh. No drift had softened them yet. The light itself was not a candle. It did not have a wick or wax. It was just light. A knot of pale gold hovering an inch above the snow, no bigger than my fist. When I stepped toward it, the hairs on my arms lifted under my coat like static. For a moment, I had the insane thought that if I reached out, my hand would pass through it, and there would be nothing there. And I wanted to prove that so badly my fingers twitched. Then someone said my name. Not loudly, not like a shout across a street. Softly, right behind my left shoulder, in the exact voice my mother used when she needed me to come inside as a kid. I spun around so fast, my boots slipped on the packed snow. The street behind me was empty. My parents' house, lights on in the front room. The neighbors' cars half buried along the curb. No one near enough to have spoken. When I turned back, the light was gone. The prints were still there. After that, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every time it snowed, the light would appear somewhere else on that lot. Sometimes near where the kitchen window had been, sometimes toward the back where the bedrooms were. Sometimes there were footprints, sometimes not. A couple of times, when I stood at the front window late at night, I saw something else. A dark shape, just big enough to be a person, standing at the edge of the glow, and then gone in the time it took me to blink. All of this would be bad enough on its own. But a week before I was supposed to go back to the city, my mother found a box of old photos in the attic. We spent an afternoon flipping through images of long-gone Christmases, yellowing shots of me and my sister in snowsuits. At the bottom of the box was a stack of pictures I had never seen. The old street, the Avery house. One of them stopped me cold. It was a photo taken from almost exactly the same angle as my parents' front window. Fresh snow, the Avery house dark against the sky. And there, in the yard, a small, solitary glow near the front steps. A child's shadow stretched toward it, long and thin on the snow. The date scribbled on the back was the winter I had gone missing for those blank hours. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake in my childhood bed, listening to the wind and the distant scrape of plows, and thought about how many storms had come and gone while that lot sat empty. How many nights something might have been replaying the same walk out into the cold, looking for someone to see it. How lucky I had been, or unlucky, that I had been the one on the street that night with the dare ringing in my ears. People like to talk about closure, like it is something you can buy with a new building or a fresh layer of grass. The lot at the end of Wren Street will get built on someday. Someone will put up a narrow new house with big windows and good insulation. They will plant a tree and set out pumpkins in October and maybe string lights on the porch in December. They will never know, Not really. What their foundation is poured over. I did not tell my parents about the lights or the footprints. They are old and tired and deserve a winter without ghosts. When the pipes were fixed and the worst of the cold passed, I went back to the city and to my small apartment with its regular problems. But when it snows hard enough that the power flickers and the street outside goes quiet, I find myself standing at my own window, staring down at the patch of sidewalk that reflects the sky. Because now I know that some houses can be demolished and erased from the tax records and still keep their shape in the places that matter. And sometimes, if you listen hard enough through the same old stories you grew up with, you hear the part that was never said out loud. The house at the end of the street is not waiting for a new family. It is waiting for you to come home in the right kind of storm.